While addiction is the only mental health illness we must address, it's a major focus of our mission to reduce the stigma of mental illness. And to do so, we have to provide resources for our synagogue, raise awareness of these issues, and give hope to families. Just as an anecdote, this past year, at the New York Metro FJMC, I mentioned the word suicide. And a teacher who was a vice principal of a school within the FJMC, one of the synagogues, came over to me afterwards and said to me, "Thank you, Stephen. I have never heard the word suicide or mental illness from a pulpit." So today, before I finally introduce Rabbi Borovitz, we're going to have a lot of support groups. We have Rabbi Iggy, who will tell us about the new T'Shuvah Center in New York. Lance is doing mental health support groups. My wife, Heidi, who's a supervisor at the Jewish Board, is going to be doing a workshop on expressive writing as a healing method, giving participants empowerment to cope with their challenges. Now, Rabbi Borovitz knows the struggle. For 3 decades, he has helped lead Beit T'Shuvah, the leading Jewish residential recovery center in North America. He serves as senior member for this tremendous community, not just as a professional calling. He himself is in recovery for over 30 years and is married to the founder of Beit T'Shuvah, Hariette Rosotto, who's here today. So the two of them will lead a number of breakout sessions, and I believe at the end of the day, what we have learned by each of our groups, we will gather together and share thoughts and hold hands and stand up together and indicate our mandate to fight this disease and be supportive of all of us. 1 in 5 families has someone from a mental illness. 1 in every 5 families. And that's just the number that is known. The numbers maybe even be much greater. So Rabbi Borovitz, his first book, called The Holy Thief, a con man's journey from darkness to light, tells the story of his life from hopelessness to redemption. He has a new book, Finding Recovery and Yourself in Torah, a daily spiritual path to holiness. It expands upon the core idea that we share today, especially today, here as a FJMC, that Torah and the wisdom of our tradition provides a blueprint for all of us to face challenges in life and overcome them. So it's my honor to introduce Rabbi Borovitz.
I want to thank Dr. Steve and Heidi for supporting this and for bringing us out here. I want to thank Creighton for being such a great influence in the programming of this, and Rabbi Andy for putting it all together and hooking us all up. And I want to thank the FJMC. You're doing something that, to be honest with you, no other Jewish organization, national organization is doing. Not the Rabbinical Assembly, not the CCAR, not even the USCJ. The URJ a little bit. But you're taking on mental health and addiction as an initiative to improve an imagined life. And I want to tell you that as somebody who's been doing this work for over 30 years, you give me hope and strength. And I'm very, very grateful. So you deserve a round of applause for yourselves. So we're going to go, my wife Hariette and I are going to go back and forth and forth and back. And we have a little bit of a routine we've been doing for quite a few years. But I want to start this off with something just so that you understand the depth of this issue. We have a major curse in America today, the epidemic of drug addiction. Sometimes I have a strange feeling that this problem may be a blessing in the form of a curse. Perhaps this will wake us up to discover that we have gone the wrong way. I interpret the young people's escape to drugs as coming from their driving desire to experience moments of exaltation. In my youth, growing up in a Jewish milieu, there was one thing we did not have to look for, and that was exaltation. Every moment is great, we were taught. Every moment is unique. Every moment can do such great things. Those are not my words, those are the words of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Zichrono Livracha, written in 1971. The Jewish world did not listen to him then, and we're only beginning to. When you put together the deaths from overdose, the deaths from alcohol-related deaths, and the deaths from other drugs, and then you put that alongside of the deaths from people engaging in very risky behaviors in order to get their drugs or alcohol. We're talking about over 200, maybe 250,000 people a year die in the United States. It is an epidemic. And for many years, Jews said, it's not our problem. It doesn't happen to us. Chicker is a goy. Not true. 10% of all the statistics involve Jews, according to research that's been done in past years. The amount of Jews that are in jail now, in prison, in the United States, is about 2 or 3%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's about the percentage of Jews in the United States. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, they've taken their tolls. When you look at how many families decided not to go to shul anymore, not to be engaged in Jewish life because they were ashamed, because they were rejected. We have a major epidemic. Hariette Rosotto saw this epidemic in 1984. She'd seen it before, but in 1984 she started to do something about it. She'll tell you how that came about. In 1987, she founded Beit T'Shuvah as a halfway house for men and women coming out of jail and prison. It has become, as Dr. Steve said, the premier Jewish faith-based residential recovery center. As the rabbi will tell you, we are not conservative. We are not reform. We are not reconstructionist. We're certainly not Orthodox. We are, however, just Jewish. You were talking about Kiruv before at lunch. That's what we do. We welcome the stranger. And there's nobody stranger in my life than my wife, Hariette Rosotto.
Read this. So the question is, how did a nice Jewish girl from Paterson, New Jersey end up founding Beit T'Shuvah, the first recovery center for Jewish addicts and criminals? About somewhere back in the 60s, a friend of mine that I had introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous said to me, you know what, Har? It's too bad you're not an addict. Maybe you could get some help. there was no help for what was going on inside of me. I was at war with myself. I had two major competing claims, voices going on inside of me. For those of you who are about my age, maybe you remember Marjorie Morningstar. So I had a Marjorie and I had a Shirley Morgenstern, and they fought with one another. Shirley was a nice Jewish girl who was supposed to marry the nice Jewish lawyer. My mother said lawyers made better husbands than doctors, that doctors kept very bad hours and they cheated. So she said, you go to college in Massachusetts so you can find a Harvard lawyer and you marry him, and that was supposed to be my life. But there was inside of me also a Marjorie, a bohemian, hippy-dippy, kind of bad girl who liked bad boys. And that was an inner war that I didn't know how to manage. I had a fat girl and a thin girl. I had an intellectual girl and one that liked true crime and true romance and chick lit. I had a missionary that wanted to save the world, and one that got depressed and took to my bed and said life is hard and then you die. I had a starter and a quitter. And so I always felt like I was going in circles and I couldn't find my identity. I couldn't find a true self. And for many years, I was asking the wrong question, like, which is the real me? I need to know which is the real me. And I tried to build an identity from the outside in. Different gurus, and I changed costumes, and I changed hairstyles, and I changed boyfriends, looking to find a wholeness within me. And yeah, I had a few husbands along the way, actually. Because I thought if I found the right guy, that would make me whole inside. So that, and motherhood and all the things that you were supposed to do didn't fix it for me, and therapy didn't fix it for me. I thought that you went to therapy so that I would become a compliant suburban housewife, and I didn't want that either. And at some point or another, after my daughter went off to college, I was really lost, and I had followed all the gurus, and I had had all of the panaceas, and nothing really had worked for me. And I was going to give up, actually. I had thought very seriously about taking my life, because I couldn't find any purpose or any meaning in my life. But I had a friend who had gone to a metaphysician, and she billed herself as a woman who created miracles. Well, I didn't believe in miracles. I grew up with an agnostic, atheistic mother who didn't want to have anything to do with organized religion, and I didn't believe in very much. But the woman, she had a Jewish name. Her name was Janet Levy, and I thought, well, I mean, how crazy could she be? So I went to see her before I stuck my head in the oven, and she said, what is it that you want, my dear? And I said, that's my problem. I don't know what I want. What I want is I want to know what I want. And she said, do you pray? Pray? I'm an intellectual Jew, you know, I don't pray. And she said, well, I'm going to pray for you. Father of the universe, take this woman by the hand and guide her to her rightful work. She knows she wants to make a difference, and she doesn't know how. And she said, you pay attention. That's it. So that was a little hokey, but I was unemployed, and I was broke. And I had left social work. Oh, I'm a social worker too by education. I had gone away from social work. But that Sunday when the want ads came, something said to me, why don't you see what social work has to offer? And there was a small ad, it was the smallest ad on the page, and it said, person of Jewish background and culture to work with Jewish criminal offenders. Oh my God, okay? If you're a nice Jewish girl who likes bad boys and you see a job working with Jewish criminal offenders, You know that's a miracle. And it was. And I made a very conscious decision not to call that a coincidence. That I really made an intellectual decision to have faith that there was a calling and that I had been called. And so I became a Jewish jail lady, going to visit Jewish men and women in jails and prisons throughout the state of California. And what I found, I was hooked from day one. Can you imagine? That was a dream come true, right? Jewish men in jail. I was going to find one. So ultimately I did. I found him. And then because God has a real sense of humor, he became a rabbi, right? And here we are. And so my story is that I am in recovery now. In recovery from a brokenness within me. And I found within Judaism a way to become whole. I was talking earlier with Mark and Iggy that the first thing that really impressed me was that Yisrael means to wrestle, that this wrestling going on inside of me was actually holy. It wasn't pathological, and I think we have pathologized the human condition, that all of us struggle for wholeness, all of us struggle for meaning and purpose. We have existential struggle, emotional struggles, spiritual struggles, to know who we are and what our value is, and that all of us need to be in recovery from the human condition. And so that is my story. You don't have to be an addict to be in recovery. And Mark's going to tell you more about recovery through Torah. Yeah?
So what happens is when we talk, we keep going back and forth. I take her stuff, she takes my stuff. We're not sure who's the therapist and who's the rabbi. But Rabbi Igal Gurin, right up here, is he is opening up the T'Shuvah Center in New York. It's a sister organization of Beit T'Shuvah, and it's so exciting, and we're so supportive, and we're so happy. Rabbi Iggy's been working with us for the past 4 or 5 years, and he calls Hariette his rabbi. So we could, right? She's a Rebbitzin. That's another story, but we won't go into that. You coming for it? So here's what I want to talk with you about. Because it is a conversation. If you guys have questions or thoughts, just shout them out. I can always come back. I know the script. We have not been engaged in this war that Hariette talks about, openly and honestly. Everybody wonders, is this the right thing? In the third chapter, if you take the first 2 stories of Genesis, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik says it so well in his Lonely Man of Faith. We have 2 Adams. I'm not saying Adam is male or female. I'm not getting into that because I could argue that piece all day long with you through the text. But the text says, for Adam in the first chapter of Genesis, conquer, have rule and dominion, make things happen, grow this world. I'm putting you in here, in this garden, to grow it and to make it flourish. And that's a drive we all have. In the second chapter of Genesis, it says, Lo tov haya Adam levado. It is not good for humans to be alone. So that's the connection. Well, I understand Dr. Steve's description of addiction as a brain disease. To me, it's much more a spiritual malady. Because the opposite is, as Johann Hari says in his book, Chasing the Screen, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So every addict that I've ever worked with, including myself, has always felt disconnected. I grew up in a nice Jewish home, Cleveland, Ohio, good family. One of my brothers is a rabbi, been a rabbi for many, many years. I didn't fit. I believed I was half a step off. I'm talking to you, and I'm going to talk to you and share with you different learnings and different experiences in my life, and I think that you all have it together because you're all perfect. You don't have any service. Whatever life throws at you, you just easily know how it happens. But I never believed that. I still don't believe it about myself. So, connection and authenticity are the two hallmarks of Torah and the two hallmarks of recovery, and I believe life. So, you go to the third chapter, and this happened when I was in prison in 1987 for the second term in the state penitentiary. I was a white collar criminal. I only, my modus operandi was a checkbook and a pen. For the first, from 1986 from 1982, I was not allowed to be, if I was in possession of a pen when a police officer or a probation officer or a parole officer stopped me, that was a violation. A felon with a pen, right. So, I was in prison again, and I started to read Torah. It was the only thing. When I got arrested, I said, the man upstairs must be trying. My first wife said, what bail bondsman do you want me to call? I said, don't call anybody. The man upstairs is trying to tell me something. I have to sit here till I can figure it out. I don't know where those words came from. It was an ecstatic experience, and it was a spiritual awakening. So I called my brother Neil, and I said, send me a Hertz Chumash and a Silverman prayer book, because that's what I used in my conservative shul in Cleveland, Ohio. My brother's a Reform rabbi, so he sent me a Plout Torah and a Gates of Prayer. And I was grateful. First time I was grateful that he sent something, what he thought was best. And I started to read, and in the third chapter of Genesis, God says, Hayeka. Now everybody talks about the Garden of Eden, the sin being disobeying, and, eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I disbelieve that. The sin of the Garden of Eden, the missing the mark of the Garden of Eden, was that God called and Adam said, I'm hiding. That's been the story of my life. It was the story of my life, actually. I read that and I started crying in a prison cell with a whole bunch of guys. I just started to cry because I realized how long I had been hiding. I was 35 years of age at the time, and I realized I hid for so many years. And what did I hide? Who did I hide from? I hid from God. I hid from myself. I hid from my family. I hid from my friends. I hid from my daughter. I hid from everyone. Because I wanted you to see, I wanted to be whoever you wanted me to be in that moment. I see it today with the young people. I see how our young people are just trying to be whatever somebody wants them to be in order to be successful. I did a talk at Yale and AEPI leaders came. And they said, this is one of the few things we have done that isn't in promoting our careers. Because they wanted to know, when is drinking too much? You know they start on Wednesdays now on college campuses, Wednesday nights. Our young people are looking for exaltation, they're looking for real connection, and they're afraid because everybody's in competition. I gotta get this job, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. This is what causes addiction because we need an escape. We're looking for this moment of exaltation. We're looking for this moment of you can come up anytime you want, just push me out of the way, what the hell?
I just wanted to comment that what we're hiding from, the original sin is our shame, and our shame at not being perfect. And at the heart of addiction are feelings of shame. And that is the pain of addiction, that I'm not good enough.
Whatever you want to do, man, you know that. Right, that is what it says in the Torah even. You're quoting Torah, baby. Yeah, proud of you. What? Rabbi Hariette. So where does this shame come from? Who knows? I don't know. Somebody know? What? Inner self? Parents? Yeah, I mean, you know, their parents, etc., etc. Because we all want to protect our children. We don't want them to fail. And you're right. My own inner being says, oh, I'm different. Now in the Talmud it says that each of us was created from Adam for 3 reasons. The first reason is whoever destroys a single soul, it's as if they've destroyed an entire world, and whoever saves a single soul, it's as if they've saved an entire world. I'm sure you've all heard that. So Rabbi Yitzhak Greenberg taught me that means every human being has infinite worth and dignity. When's the last time somebody told you that you had infinite worth and infinite dignity? When's the last time you told somebody else that? Second reason is so that nobody could say my father was better than yours. So Rabbi Yitzhak taught me that means equal. You're worth an entire world. You're precious. And so is the person next to you, behind you, across from you. Third reason that unlike humans, when they make coins from the same mold, every coin comes out the same. The Kadosh Baruch Hu mints humans from the same mold as Adam, and each one of us is unique. We should carry a piece of paper around. It says the world was created for my sake. So you have unique, infinite, equal worth, dignity, value. There are no two people that are exactly alike, so who are you competing with? Who am I competing with? We've had other rabbis. You've had other rabbis on the dais here. There's rabbis maybe even in the crowd here. I don't have to compete with you, nor do you have to compete with me. You gotta be you and I gotta be me. That's what God wants. That's what we were created for. Because when any one of us is out of our place, according to my friend and teacher, Rabbi Edward Feinstein, just like if a letter's missing from Torah, the Torah's pasul, you can't use it. When we're not living our authentic scripts, when we're not living who we really are, when we're trying to be somebody else, which is a major disease in this world, we're making the world invalid. That's how much power we have, and we all are guilty. So what do you do with guilt? Adam goes to shame. Addicts go to shame. Most people go to shame. I mean, I'm sure that many of you have shame in you about different things that you just don't talk about. You keep it way down in, and it's a secret, and nobody will know. And our tradition says no. In Shabbat 153a, Rebbe Eliezer says, do tshuva one day before you die. That's Shabbat tractate of the Talmud, by the way. I want to be clear. His students say, no, who knows the day of their death? Bidiyuk, exactly. So do tshuva every day. Now, I would suggest that most people only hear about tshuva. Actually, somebody said it to us last night. Well, I know tshuva around Yom Kippur. And I know Baal tshuva. And I know tshuva as an answer. So, what else is tshuva? Here's the deal. Tshuva was put into the world according to the sages before the world was created. I add because God knew we would make mistakes and need a way back. And tshuva is different than I'm sorry. How many of you have ever said I'm sorry? How many of you have done the same thing that you said you were sorry for more than once? Except for Iggy. What? Right, he doesn't even say he's sorry. So, think about it. In tshuva, we're able to be real. Tshuva allows us to be authentic. Now, Hariette came up with a term, coined a term. Why don't you just stand here and we'll go back and forth.
I think that one of the things that confuses us and keeps us from being our true selves is that we get stuck in our roles. And when you're relating role to role, you are not relating soul to soul. And so as family members, I think often we get stuck in our roles and we become those roles with their scripts. In our business practices, in our friendships, we play parts. And that hides the soul part of our connection. And the real connection that happens between people happens when they're open, authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. And so that's how we get to connection, is soul to soul, not role to role.
Yes. So when you think about this, okay? Do I have to turn this on? Am I on?
Give me this one. Yeah. I have another one for you.
So when you think about it, it becomes this thing where how many of you or how many friends of yours would think of approaching the rabbi with a deeply personal problem as opposed to going to the therapist? How many of you would go to the therapist for all these things? So, as one of our rabbis, Rabbi Jonathan Omerman, said, people go to therapists for what they should be going to their rabbis for, or their clergy. And now rabbis are taught, send them away, refer them out. They come more than 2 times to see you, refer them out, they have a mental problem. Psychological. Here's my psychological problem. What is the meaning of my life? Why am I here? Right. Now, I learned that through Torah. I went to a psychologist, I went to psychiatrists. Psychiatrist one time told me, "You're beyond my scope of care." So I went to the rabbi. But think about it. To be authentic, I have to be me. And to be me, I have to find out who I am. And I find out who I am through Torah. There's not, so when I was in prison, one of the things that I learned right away was Rabbi Heschel. And he said you have to immerse yourself in the text. Don't worry about picking it apart. All this critical analysis, which is fine. What's more important is to be immersed in it. So, is there any parent here who hasn't thought, "Oh, would I like to just take my kid and shake him and choke him and get him right?" Then you know Abraham. Is there anybody who has a sibling who hasn't engaged in any kind of sibling rivalry or competition with your sibling? Anybody? Then you know Jacob. Is there anybody who's been a leader and said, "What am I doing?" Then you know Moses. Is there anybody who has made a mistake and tried to defend the mistake? Anybody here ever done that?
In other words,
You know.
the Torah is the story of a dysfunctional Jewish family.
Well, Norman Cohn in his book Self-Struggle and Change takes it apart. It's beautiful. I mean, I think that all social workers, Jewish social workers should, and therapists should read it because it's that great. So what happens is the story, so here, we get out of Egypt, right? You remember Exodus from Egypt. We get to the Red Sea, what do? Fetch and blame Moses. Moses says, "Don't worry," and he looks up to God, and God says, "What are you looking at me for? Go forward." Three days after the Egyptians were drowned, 3 days after crossing the Red Sea, what do? They complain. So it got us into a thing where, you know, my grandparents, especially my father's mother, of blessed memory, whenever you would say something good, she would go, "Toy, toy." Don't bring the Ein Horror. Right? But you see, in living in recovery allows me to see the lessons in the beauty of Moses and the beauty of the children of Israel, and allows me to be in there with them, be in that struggle. So we're going forward. We are authentic. What you see is what you get. I don't hide from you or anybody else. Now, it causes me great problems, there's no doubt about it, because most people don't want to see real. I mean, after my first book came out, a few board members of Beit T'Shuvah said, "You know, that book really is something." I said, "You know the story." And they said, "Yeah, but we only saw it in bits and pieces, but reading it all at once, oy!" I said, "Oh well, you got me." And we've been doing it ever since, so it's not that bad. Now, along with authenticity comes true self versus false self. In T'Shuvah, I get to the true self. In T'Shuvah, I get to who I really am. In the second breakout group, we're going to pass out some T'Shuvah sheets and show you how we do T'Shuvah. Now, remember, in Judaism, in our tradition, sin is basically, most often, missing the mark. How much more time do I have, Andy?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. T'Shuvah is really missing the mark. The long confessional on Yom Kippur is Al Chet Shechatanu. Chet is an archery term, means you didn't hit the bullseye. And I think what I want to spend the last part of this talk on right now is freedom. In his book, Man is Not Alone, Rabbi Heschel says, God is unwilling to be alone, and we cannot forever remain impervious to what God wants to show. Faith is a blush in the presence of God. Some of us blush, others wear a mask, which veils spontaneous sensitivity to the holy, ineffable dimension of reality. We all wear so much mental makeup, we have almost forfeited our face. But faith only comes when we stand face to face, the ineffable in us with the ineffable beyond us. Suffer ourselves to be seen, to commune, to receive a ray and reflect it. But to do that, the soul must be alive within the mind. That's a lot, so I'm going to unpack it with you quickly. Think of all the mental makeup we wear. When something doesn't go right, what happens for me, my mind goes to everything. It just starts on this wheel and starts spinning and spinning, and I'm looking at, oh, I didn't get, oh, they didn't respond this way, or look at the, anybody ever get an email and you were sure that the person was angry or being obstinate or anything like that, and it was just an email? I'm going through that now. So, the mental makeup comes from our lack of connection. The mental makeup of an attitude is, I'm not good enough, I need something to escape, or I need to feel alive. People who cut, people, they do that so that they can feel something because they feel dead inside. Part of our mental makeup is I have to be like this in order to get what I want. You won't like me if I'm not XYZ. Fill in the blank. And that mental makeup, you can't see me anymore. We have to stand face to face. The ineffable in us, the God, the divine image in us with the divine image beyond us. And guess what? Rabbi Heschel also says to know, if you want to know God, hone your sense of the human. Each one of us are divine reminders. So how often do you see beyond the makeup that somebody is showing you? Not because you want to catch him, but because you want to hold him. The greatest issue in families is, I want to do whatever I can to help my child, and I can't see them anymore. They're not letting me see them. Am I right? We don't have to judge an addict, which we do. We put them in jail. How crazy is that? We put people who have mental illnesses in jail. We have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity to allow ourselves to be seen. And yes, it's a suffer. In other words, I have to tolerate you seeing all of me. I have to tolerate the fact, I have to learn how to tolerate that you see me. You see good and you see not so good. And you embrace me anyway, or because of. How often have we pushed people away because we don't like what we see?
And I think that we live in a culture that wants to define our value and our worth externally. How we look, what we own, how much money we have. People confuse self-worth with net worth. We compare ourselves to others and feel better or worse than. All of that goes into people feeling not good enough, because your worth has to be an intrinsic sense of value, because we are a divine need, not how we look on the outside. And people get very confused by that and feel inferior because they feel they don't have as much or they don't look as good.
So Rabbi Dean Steinsaltz, in his book 13 Petal Rose, he's got a lot of great things. When he talks about tshuva, he says what tshuva does, it shatters the order of our existence. When I do tshuva, when I'm real with you, because part of tshuva is also how I'm not going to do it again. I shatter the order of my own existence, because my own existence is like a hamster wheel. Some people say it is same shit, different day. And it also makes us break through the ordinary limits of ourself. We are unlimited except for how we limit ourselves. In order to stop limiting ourselves, we have to release ourselves from the tyranny of the self-centered ego, because that's what Rabbi Heschel calls freedom. And beyond that, we have to allow ourselves, to let go of the old stories and the lies we tell ourselves. One of the great lies that we tell ourselves is we're not good enough, we won't get this, somebody else is lucky, oh look, they've got money so they can do what they want, which isn't exactly a lie. But all of these stories. So I've got a story. My father, from the time I was 7 until I was 14, had a heart attack, 7 heart attacks in 7 years. Died when I was 14, he was my best friend. I felt cheated and lost. I used that story for 20 years to validate a lot of bad behavior. Recovery for me was letting that story stay in the past. It's true. It's true. My father had 7 heart attacks in 7 years. Never would he have ever wanted me to act the way I did. So all of us have stories. The Torah tells us about the stories. 2 minutes, okay. The Torah tells us about the stories. And from these stories, the reason that Torah is such a book of eternal wisdom and eternal truth, and some of it might have happened, is that from the stories we learn. I don't have to complain. God provides. Now, Iggy thinks God doesn't give a shit. I think God cares a lot. We have this argument all the time. And both of us have deep faith and deep belief. Here's the thing. You want to know who the hero of the Torah is for me? Judah. Of course. Because Judah, who said, let's sell Joseph, wouldn't let Benjamin be enslaved to the viceroy of Egypt. Sir Walter Scott, the author of Ivanhoe, said that the prose in Vayigash of Judah is the greatest prose he ever read. So think about this. How are you going to make sure? So here's the last piece I want to give you in the last minute. I have 4 offers for you. Making 4 offers. 1, if you're in California, come to Beit T'Shuvah. You can visit. You can see what's happening. If you're a Jewish educator or a clergy, we run, this is the second thing, we run immersions to help you learn about addiction and how to deal with people, families, people in recovery, and even people in active addiction. 3, we have a spiritual counseling training program so that when people come to you, you can be the person that the people are looking for. You can help somebody, you can be an advocate for their soul. 4, oh, by the way, the offer to visit also goes in on the East Coast. The T'Shuvah Center is opening in September, middle of September. 4, we have an original play called Freedom Song. It's gone all over the country, and we offer that to you. You can have Freedom Song come. It's a Passover Seder and a 12-step meeting on a split stage. Kids, families, adults weep at the truth and the depth of that play. It was written, it's an original play from Beit T'Shuvah. We want you to take advantage of these offers. For you in the men's clubs, if you're any place in this country, we will come, we will help you set it up. We are here to serve. We do it because we believe in what we do, and it is who we are. This is how we live our authentic script. I thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and welcome to FJMC Convention, our 90th year, and happy 4th of July. I don't know if anybody said it yet, but there you go. My name is Bruce Tomar. You have just experienced the start of a brand new initiative for FJMC, Imagine Life. And I'd like to thank Rabbi Mark and Rabbi Hariette and Rabbi Iggy for being with us today. I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a few people that helped bring this program to life. Lance Candle, co-president of the Temple Bethel Makor Chaim Men's Club in North Jersey region, who brought this concept to my attention. Steve and Heidi Mandel from New York region, and Gary Smith, chairman of the Foundation for Jewish Life, who gave this program some depth. And of course, our executive director, Rabbi Annie Sugarman, and our incoming FJMC president, Tom Sudo, who saw the potential of this worthwhile endeavor. FJMC has always been at the forefront of creative and innovative programming. This program takes us to new heights of what it means to be Jewish. As you just heard from Rabbi Mark and Hariette, our Torah teaches us the life-affirming lessons that brings meaning to our lives. For too long, people that we know and love have lived in the shadows with mental health and/or substance abuse issues. Our hope with this program is to bring you models to bring back to your clubs and regions to start the conversation, to erase the Shonda factor, and to bring hope and healing to those afflicted. This afternoon, there are many compelling programs to choose from. And like the holiday we celebrate today, you have the freedom to choose. Every choice you make will be a good one. We have worked to arrange a wide array of initiatives for you to bring back home. You can delve deeper into the Imagine Life program. Rabbi Mark and Hariette will be up here, and Rabbi Iggy will be down in Queens Key too. And there will be other many programs in the next couple hours. We also have, you can also experience a new and innovative HMV program, and there are some later discussion groups that you may avail yourself of. Whatever you choose, make the most of it. And to complete the afternoon, join us back here at 4:45 that will bring everything together and give you the basis for your new program. We will be around to answer questions today and throughout the rest of the weekend. And of course, come see us at Program Fair tomorrow afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you. Enjoy.